November 10th, 2009. Neustadt, Germany. A high-speed rail line cuts through the silence. Standing before it is Robert Enke, a titan of the arena, a guardian of the net who had stood before the cheering millions of Barcelona, Benfica, and Fenerbahce. But on this day, he stood alone. The police chief called it a confirmed suicide, but you need to look closer. This was not merely an event, it was the final collapse of a structural anomaly that had been festering for years. Enke lived in the paradox of the modern man, externally a king of the stadium, internally a prisoner of the void. His descent began not in failure, but in the corrosive silence of self-doubt. It traveled with him from the sunny coasts of Portugal to the high-pressure cauldron of Catalonia. Even after the tragic death of his daughter, a blow that would shatter lesser men, he rebuilt himself, only to face the abyss again. A stomach infection, a fear of losing his adopted child, and the internal architecture finally gave way. He did not die because he was weak. He died because his psychological immune system had no defense against the siege of the primal ego. To understand why a man at the peak of physical dominance ends his own existence, we must look away from the physical and gaze into the structural imperative of the soul. The manuscript opens with a cold truth, often ignored. There are those who view submission to the absolute as a weakness, an insult to their illusory greatness. This is the deception of the primal ego. In reality, the core of true power lies in completing one's inherent brokenness by connecting to the source. The messenger of truth, the Arab sage, spoke the ultimate law centuries ago. The highest form of connection is the call, and the highest form of the call is gratitude. This is not mere rhetoric. This is energetic physics. Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness proves this alignment. At the bottom of the scale lies shame, guilt, and grief, the vibration of the grave where Enke resided. At the summit, gratitude and peace. When the consciousness is locked in gratitude, the primal ego dissolves into the will of the Creator. The anxiety of the finite world vanishes because the soul understands that provision, the very sustenance of life, is guaranteed by the infinite. But the lower self is the architect of all psychological pressure. It cuts the lifeline to the source. It forces the individual to rely on finite, fragile causes. It creates hunger that cannot be fed, demanding double the income, double the fame, driven by a neurotic lack of trust in the promise of the architect. The body regenerates itself. The liver rebuilds. The skin sheds. We cannot stop this biological march. But the thoughts? The realm of free will, that is the battleground. If we do not master the thoughts, the soul that commands evil takes the wheel. As the ancient law dictates, the Creator will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. The external reality is merely a printout of the internal program. But the machine is complex. It is not just spirit, it is biology. Shift the scene to September 14th, 2016. Susanna Cahalan, 24 years old, a journalist at the height of her powers. Her reality began to melt. Hallucinations, paranoia. She was convinced bed bugs were consuming her.
She became violent, a stranger to her own bloodline. The doctors prepared to commit her to a psychiatric ward, labeling her mind as broken. They were wrong. It took Dr. Suhail Najjar, a seeker of truth from the East, to ask her to perform one simple task: draw a clock. She drew it, but she crowded all the numbers onto the right side of the circle. This was not madness. This was mechanics. It was inflammation, her own body attacking her brain's hardware. She was the brain on fire. This reveals the law of integration. The human personality is a fortress built on interconnected systems. If one wall fails, the castle falls. First, the biophysiological system, the hardware. If the heart, liver, or immune system falters, the mind follows. A virus in the spinal cord can mimic schizophrenia. A simple flu can degrade memory. We are tethered to the flesh. Then the mental system, the neurons, the chemical symphony of the brain. A lack of sleep crashes serotonin. A thyroid imbalance mimics anxiety. When a man seeks refuge in smoke or narcotics to escape the abyss, he is merely hacking this chemical system, flooding his receptors until they burn out, leaving him with a slow, stuttering perception of reality. To build a fortress, one must secure the perimeter: nutrition, sleep, movement, and the sharp separation of benefit from harm. And beneath the logic lies the volatile magma of the emotional system. This system emerges 2 years after birth, forged in the fires of primary interactions. Emotions are not just feelings, they are actions of the self. Hunger is a message to the body. Sadness is a message to the soul. The weak soul is enslaved by its passions. The strong soul engages in combat with them. It begins with wonder, the first reaction to the unknown. From wonder, we move to respect or contempt, love or hate, courage or cowardice. This system acts as a glue for memory. Emotion welds ideas to the mind. Fear keeps the concept of danger alive long after the predator has left. If this system is not calibrated, if the small alarms are treated with the same biochemical response as imminent death, the personality fractures. This is the seed of mental illness.
The biological and emotional systems are merely the internal engine, but the machine must move through a treacherous terrain known as the social system. This is the external matrix, the family, the tribe, the streets. It is here that the molten core of the self is either hardened into steel or shattered into shards. The social gaze is a potent weapon. It shapes reality. Consider the man named Colin, crippled by a hunchback, imprisoned not by stone walls, but by the weight of public perception. He retreated into the shadows. His body deteriorated into paralysis, until a singular force of light, a woman named Mary, shattered his dark reflection and rebuilt his self-image. The lesson is terrifyingly simple. The people around you are capable of editing your genetic expression. The studies at Ohio State University proved this grim mechanic. Couples locked in toxic, controlling marriages suffered from collapsed immune systems and skyrocketing blood pressure, while those in harmonious unions walked with biological armor. To exist in a toxic environment is to be slowly poisoned by invisible radiation. We carry these invisible scars from the dawn of our existence, the fixation phase. In the vulnerability of childhood, trauma is not erased. It is written into the deep code of the subconscious. It lies dormant, a sleeper agent, waiting for a second shock, a death, a heartbreak, a sudden failure to wake it up.
This is most volatile during the adolescent crisis, that critical window where the mind desperately seeks coordinates in a chaotic universe. Who am I? Where is the extraction point? Why is death the inevitable end? If these questions remain unanswered, the personality structure remains incomplete, fragile, waiting to collapse at the first gust of wind. From this furnace of development, the personality emerges, a unique fingerprint of endurance. The universal law states, the architect does not burden a soul beyond its capacity. This confirms a structural inequality in endurance. The prick of a thorn to a weak man is a dagger wound to the warrior. The goal? To build the personality of steel, exemplified by men like Charles Schwab. A master of human engineering, Schwab earned a fortune not by bending steel, but by bending wills without breaking spirits. When he found his workers smoking under a no-smoking sign, the lesser leader would have unleashed his ego. Schwab did the opposite. He handed them cigars and said, "I'd appreciate it if you boys smoked these outside." He didn't strip their dignity, he bought their loyalty. This is the art of flowing communication, resolving the conflict before it crystallizes into stress.
To truly withstand the pressure of the finite world, one must cultivate the attributes of the order. First among them is self-sufficiency, the internal arsenal. Look to the shadow of the samurai, Miyamoto Musashi. He won battles before drawing his blade because he understood the psychological siege. He would arrive late to duels, letting his opponents simmer in their own anxiety, their rage dismantling their focus. By the time Musashi appeared, he faced a broken man. The samurai proverb rings true. The weak man facing a warrior fights three opponents: the enemy, the enemy's spirit, and his own fearful self. You must eliminate the internal traitor. Then there is the mastery of perspective. The man who labors for a wage ends the day destroyed. The man who views the same labor as physical conditioning returns home energized. The action is identical. The mental frame changes the biological outcome. And this frame is anchored by the ultimate stabilizer, connection to the absolute. It is a statistical reality. Those who align themselves with the source hardly ever succumb to the darkness of suicide. They understand their worth is not determined by the market, but by the Creator. There is a story of a man who came to the messenger of truth, crushed by the weight of his errors. He asked if his mistakes were larger than the mountains or the skies. The messenger framed the scale. The mercy of the Absolute dwarfs the cosmos. This high elevation perspective annihilates self-loathing, the cancer of the soul. However, a warning for the alpha types, the conquerors, the ambitious. This personality drive is a double-edged sword. While it carves a path to the throne, it often burns the vessel that carries it. The Type A achiever lives in a perpetual state of time famine, seeing every peer as a rival. This leads to burnout. The solution is hybridization. Keep the ambition of the alpha, but adopt the strategic calm of the stoic. Combine this with the internal locus of control. The 1964 Benfield study confirmed it. Those who believe they control their destiny suffer less than those who believe they are victims of chance. Umar, the great caliph and titan of history, understood this physics. When struck by a stone, he did not blame the wind. He said, "A sin for a sin." This is not guilt. This is radical responsibility. It means you are the captain of the ship, not a passenger drifting into the rocks.
The screen fades to black, and we hear a laugh that sounds like a scream. October 4th, 2019. The world witnessed Joker, a film that terrified law enforcement agencies across America. But this was not just a movie. It was a clinical documentation of a structural collapse. Arthur Fleck, a man physically wasted by malnutrition, haunted by the specter of uncontrolled laughter. He stands as the ultimate avatar of psychological pressure. He was not born a monster. He was forged by the relentless hammer of stress. A sick mother, a dead-end job, societal rejection. The social forge we spoke of failed him. The tragedy of Arthur Fleck is not that he was mentally ill. It is that he had no exhaust valve. He is the boiler that exploded. Scientists struggle to define stress, but the mechanism is primal. It is the fight or flight protocol. When a beast approaches, the heart hammers, sugar floods the blood, the body prepares for war. This saves the gazelle, but for modern man, the predator is not a lion. It is a mortgage, a toxic boss, a crumbling marriage. You cannot run from debt. You cannot physically fight an email. So the toxic energy remains trapped in the flesh. The emergency state never ends. The arteries constrict, the pressure builds, and if the soul does not intervene, the body breaks. Scientists struggle to define stress, but the weak mind deploys defense mechanisms to survive this siege, phantom shields made of glass. Displacement, the man humiliated by his boss returns home to abuse his family. Projection, the liar accuses the world of dishonesty. Daydreaming, constructing a fantasy castle because reality is a dungeon. These are the tools of the coward. The warrior of the light uses voluntary weapons. First, the walking meditation, to move through the world with the rhythm of the breath, turning a commute into a spiritual cleansing. Second, the psychological vaccine. Just as a virus prepares the immune system, anticipating pain prepares the mind. In the brutal labs of science, rats that were warned before a shock suffered far less physical damage than those shocked by surprise. The stoic braces for the blow, and thus the blow does not break him. Third, true sleep, the meditative state where the brain disconnects from the chaotic static of the world to download the silence of the cosmos. But let us leave the theory and touch the blood of history. To understand true hardiness, we must witness the life of Louis Zamperini, an Italian-American boy bullied for his accent. He learned a dark lesson early, fighting 3 boys at once. He channeled that rage into the track, becoming the Torrance Tornado. But the arena changed. World War II, the Pacific Ocean, a plane crash. For 47 days he floated on a raft, battling sharks, starvation, enemy fire, surviving only on raw fish and sheer will. And yet the ocean was kind compared to what awaited him. The Bird, a sadistic prison guard obsessed with breaking the Olympian. Zamperini was beaten, humiliated, forced to hold heavy timber until his muscles tore. But he possessed the diamond core. Hardiness is not rigidity. It is the realization that pain is merely data. Muhammad Ali, the king of the ring, once revealed his secret. I don't start counting my sit-ups until it hurts, because those are the only ones that count.
This resilience is fueled by faith in change. The psychological lab reveals a chilling truth. Put a rat in water with no escape, it drowns in an hour. Save it once, then put it back in. It will swim for days. Why? Because it has hope. It knows there is a hand that might pull it out. The man who believes his current suffering is permanent dies. The man who sees it as a passing cloud survives. This is the ship captain's mindset. A captain does not worry about the port while he is in the storm. He seals the bulkheads and lives in the day-tight compartment. We must also weaponize purpose. Look to Desmond Doss, a pacifist in the slaughterhouse of war. He refused to touch a rifle, yet he walked into the fire of Okinawa. While men killed, he healed. Architect, help me get one more. He dragged 50 men from the mouth of hell. When the goal is charged with emotional electricity, the pain of the journey becomes irrelevant. But be warned, know when to fold. In the stock market, the master investor sets a stop loss. If the price falls, he sells. He does not go down with the ship. In life, do not batter down a door the architect has locked. There is a story of a traveler who forced his way to France against all odds, defying the subtle signs of the universe, only to arrive and succumb to sickness. Sometimes, giving up on a wrong path is the ultimate act of strategy. Finally, we ascend to the spiritual stronghold. Bilal, a slave, tortured under the scorching desert sun, a massive rock crushing his chest, yet he was stronger than his tormentor, the beast. Why? Because the beast relied on the savage animal soul, while Bilal was powered by the infinite connection. And do not forget the armor of humor. The messenger of truth, the Arab sage, was known to smile often. He understood the biology of the soul. He taught that a smile is charity. It is a signal to the biology that all is well. The man who can laugh in the face of the abyss confuses the darkness. The conclusion. The journey from the primal ego to the exalted self is not a sprint. It is a war of attrition. From the tragedy of Enke, who lacked the internal infrastructure, to the triumph of Zamperini, who transmuted pain into power, the path is clear. It requires the acceptance of brokenness, the calibration of the mind, the hardening of the body, and the surrender to the absolute. We are not designed to carry the world. We are designed to walk through it, utilize its pressure to forge our character, and then take a rest. Even the warrior must sleep. Even Napoleon needed St. Helena. Find your silence, build your fortress, and when the train comes, stand your ground.
The blueprint is now in your hands, but a map is useless to those who refuse to walk. Most will hear these words and return to the noise of the masses, destined to fracture under the weight of the world. Do not be one of them. If you seek to master the architecture of your soul, if you are ready to join the silent few who transmute pressure into power, signal your intent, subscribe to the order, enter the archive. The transmutation has begun.